Welcome to the Fine Print, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Caleb Teskey, and today I am joined by a repeat guest here, David Templeman from Roving Farms in Brownington, Vermont. David, thank you so much for being here with me again.
Thank you very much. Yeah, happy to.
And now I don't like to spoil the news. I like to let my guests cut out their own news. So would you mind telling everyone maybe why I've invited you back here again?
Well, I'm going to imagine it has something to do with my Orleans 3 House seat that I've been made a candidate of for. Yeah, so about 2.5 months ago, I got a contact from one of the guys from the Orleans County Democratic Committee, and they wanted to know if I had any interest in being their candidate for the newly cut out Orleans 3 seat for the state Senate, or not for the state Senate, I'm sorry, for the state House. There's 150 seats and they just redistrict them. They were looking to get about 4,100 people for each district. So my district includes Barton, Orleans, Brownington, and Westmore. So I agreed. It took me about a week and a half. It took me about a week and a half to decide to pull the trigger on it, but I did, and organized a write-in campaign as I took too much time to decide and couldn't get my name on the ballot. So I worked with a few local groups and some pretty influential locals, and received 85 write-in votes for my candidacy. And after the election, I discovered that the Republicans hadn't put anybody forward for a candidate. So I am.
So you're running unopposed.
Indeed.
So, I mean, I don't want to jump the gun on this, but does that sort of make you a shoo-in for this House seat?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, it would be a major upset. Maybe a last-minute write-in candidacy would have, a slight chance of getting it.
Who was in that seat before you? Do you know?
Oh, well, I would be the first person in that seat. It's a new district.
Oh, because of the redistricting, that's a brand new seat.
Indeed.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And who talked you into that, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah. So this would be a gentleman named Ron Horton. And later I found out that my name was pretty far down the list. They contacted a very large list of people who they thought would be interested. And apparently they had to go really far down to get to me. But
so what? No one else was interested, and you're kind of like the 7th round draft pick.
Exactly.
You're the Tom Brady here.
Yeah, and and the Republicans didn't have anybody, right?
Wow.
Yeah.
So I want to ask you this, David, because you said you're also looking for a cultivation license, which we spoke about last time you were on the program, which I believe, as you said, would make you the first licensed cannabis cultivator to sit in the legislature in Montpelier. Is that correct?
Indeed. From my understanding, I don't know of any other people running or who have already held a seat. But I'm open to have a conversation with them if they exist.
I also don't know of anybody. As far as I know, you would also be the first.
Right.
Wow. And what are your thoughts on? So let me ask you this. Why did you decide to get into politics? Let's talk about that first.
Well, I mean, it was explained to me. I didn't realize how far down the list I was, but it was explained to me that nobody else was getting on this. And I felt that was kind of a sad condition, right? Like, to be living in this amazing democracy, and specifically Vermont. I mean, just, the size of it is very human scale, and our participation as citizens is accessible. I mean, just the way the whole CCB has operated, allowing call-in participants just from the general public.
Public comments.
Exactly. I mean, and then you see that those comments have impact, right? So, indeed, this is a very special democracy, a very special place, and that made itself apparent to me through the whole cannabis legislation. And I just felt like, look, it's my duty, right? If called to it, it wouldn't be something I would choose. I would look for, but it came to me, and it's needed, and here I am.
So you feel a certain sort of civic duty to step up to the plate here. Is that true?
I think that would be it in a nutshell.
Very interesting. And now, so let's dive into some of your goals. What is your campaign about? What are some of the issues that have drawn you to sort of throw your name into the ring here?
Yeah, so that's really interesting. You're basically talking about my platform.
Yes, please.
It's very well under development right now. Like I've said, like I'm a last minute guy. I've only had 2 months to really think about this. But where I really started was talking with other people in my community about what they thought needed to happen or not happen, right? Some of this is where just to leave things alone. But there are some clear emergencies that some legislation may be able to clear up. And then, of course, with the cannabis legislation, I think there's a lot more room there to fix things, hone things down a little bit from a legal standpoint. Like, right now, related to cannabis, looking for a bank, they're all asking for $2,000 a month, which is, I mean, it's a predatory condition, and there needs to be a lot of protect people from that. As a tier 1 outdoor grower, I mean, you can do the math. There's not a lot of money in it. What they're asking for is anywhere from 20 to 25% of after tax profits. The tax is out of control. The licensing is out of control. I mean, it's really not. Everybody thinks this is a gold mine, and getting kind of greedy and getting their fingers in it. And the banks, I think, are an easy one here.
Are they? So do you feel in a sense that banks are sort of exploiting this new market and taking advantage of people who are just trying to make a living?
Yeah, and no money's been made yet.
Right. And that was true because before you could get a license, you had to have a bank account. Isn't that correct? And so there are some people who might actually be paying these fees before they've been able to sell any product or make any money.
That's exactly what's happening at the moment. Yeah.
And now I don't want to focus on just the cannabis, but it does seem like it would have helped if we had some people with experience in growing cannabis or selling cannabis involved in the process of creating the legislation or helping with the control board. Am I off base on that?
No, I think that's exactly what I offer. Right. And then I also have ears, and I can listen to other people and serve as a intermediary for the whole community. I mean, some things that have come up are the 92% vape tax. I mean, what the hell is that about?
That was about, I believe that was about banning the jewels back when they were dealing with that issue. But I also thought it was kind of ridiculous then. Sorry to interrupt, but that was my take on the vape tax.
Yeah, THC limits. And we really do want to keep this a mom and pop operation, right? We do not want big out of state companies coming in and and even within the state, how we operate as a community, as an industry, we want to keep it as diversified and unconsolidated as possible, so that the money can stay in the communities.
So let me ask you this. How do you feel about the fact that all 5 of our medical licenses have already been sold off to out-of-state corporations?
I'm aware of that. I may be mistaken here, but I understand one of them is trying to get out now.
Hmm.
So I yeah, I mean that's definitely of concern. That's definitely of concern. But from my sense, they're being kept at bay. Maybe not as much as some people would like. Yeah, I mean, I think we want to keep this Vermont.
And I think the major concern was that they were selling a lot of contaminated products, moldy flour to cancer patients and people that have serious health risks associated with that. Like, if you have cancer or a respiratory disease, breathing in moldy flour or something could be incredibly detrimental to your health. And I think that is the major concern that I'm hearing around Vermont.
Interesting. Yeah, especially the cultivators who are like myself, who are growing outdoor this year. Everybody's screaming fungus, right?
Sure.
Uh, yeah, and that is something that is not being tested for.
Mm.
And some people seem to be concerned about that. Some people seem to feel that that's actually, better for them. And I do see the value of the state trying to lean this towards outdoor growing, because it is less impactful from an environmental perspective. It keeps more money in state. I mean, we do not generate all of our own electricity in state. So when we have these gardens, and if they're not on solar, we are making an impact on the grid, and we're sending our money overstate, to other people who are generating electricity, say in Quebec. I know that a lot of our electricity in northern Vermont's coming from Quebec.
Hmm.
I would hate to see our cannabis dollars, indirectly cannabis dollars, go to them.
And that's been one of the big arguments that people have made who are trying to push this forward is, hey, if we don't legalize this now, people are going to Maine, people are going to Massachusetts. People in northeastern Vermont are very close to Maine. People in southern Vermont, they're very close to Massachusetts. Now New York is jumping on board. So, to delay this is to just sort of guarantee that those dollars are being sent out of state. Would you agree with that?
I do. I think the process definitely needs to be done carefully, though. But it seems that the banking part of this is right now the big holdup for most people, and that $2,000 price tag a month is, or more. I think that may be holding some people back.
And do you think those kind of and the banking is really the last step? So
Yeah.
I've talked to a number of people who have gotten there and they were so happy and they're like, we just need a bank account. And they're like, yeah, that's just going to be an extra 15, 20 grand a year. And they're
Yeah.
like, well, fuck, what do we do now? Like, do you think that that banking fee might drive some people back to the black market?
Yeah, well, or keep people in the black market who haven't come this far now. I mean, I think there are a lot of people, maybe not a lot, but there's a handful of them kind of waiting and seeing how the pioneers are managing. And they're probably watching us right now, with a very curious eye to see how this all pans out. But I mean, you can crunch the numbers. It's 125 plants an outdoor tier 1 grower can have. Let's say 2 pounds a plant. I mean, that's pretty conservative.
Right.
That's 250 pounds, say at $1,000 a pound, conservatively speaking. That's $250,000. Maybe it costs about $25,000 or $50,000 to put that together. And then the taxes are horrific.
Right,
So,
because through the 280E tax code, cultivators and other cannabis companies are not allowed to write off any of their costs like a normal business would be able to.
yeah, goods of what's the term? Cost of goods sold are not considered deductions. So that basically would leave a person like me paying 50 to 52% federal tax. Yeah. And then
On
there's a
top of your
state tax.
insurance and all of the other shit.
Yeah. So after everything's said and done, before we throw in the bank fees, I'll be lucky to make 100 grand a year.
Right.
You know,
And what about the packaging and the labeling and all of the warnings that you have to put on there?
sure. I'm not even putting that into perspective, but I think that's important. I think all of these elements are essential. I think what doesn't need to happen is the gouging, right?
Do you
I,
feel like that's what's happening right now?
well, with the banks, for sure.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And
Um,
and I know like credit unions are the only banks allowed to take these accounts because that money doesn't cross state lines or something.
they're
And
not
I'm one.
insured.
Sorry, what was that?
Those banks are not insured federally,
Okay. And
right?
so, do you see a day in the near future when we might see commercial banks jumping into the game?
Yeah, when it becomes legalized nationwide.
Hmm.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't think that's in the favor of the federal government, given this high tax rate they're able to excise.
Hmm.
Right. So, I mean,
And oh,
yeah,
sorry to interrupt you, but I see that the taxes on it's a 14% excise tax and a 6% sales, so 20% effectively. So basically twice as much as alcohol. Um,
yeah.
what do you think about that? Do you think cannabis should be taxed twice as much as alcohol?
Well, here's what I'm thinking about that. There is a lot of high aspirations for that money to go back and serve areas such as my district that are underserved by the state government. We don't even. I mean, not to suggest we want or need a police force in our district, but it's just there is no police in a district of 4,300 people.
Right,
Um,
Brownington, like you don't have town cops, right? You maybe see a sheriff once in a while.
well, certain townships have contracts with sheriff department.
Right. So they come out and visit once in a while, just
they have their patrols. Though Barton and Orleans are no longer covered by the sheriff's department. Brownington is. There's some complaints. I don't know how valid they are, but there are complaints about their patrols being on a regular time schedule. So if there are nefarious activities afoot, you just don't do them between 1 and 2 p.m. and you're sorted. You know,
hmm.
so yeah, there's a lot of and that's just one example of how we are underserved. In the town of Orleans, in the village of Orleans, there's some elderly housing where they used to have senior meal plans. Well, that program left Orleans and is now in Glover. So the locals here in Orleans, if you're a senior, have to somehow ride, right, to get their meal in Glover. It doesn't make sense. So we're seeing a lot of services, mental health services, for example, just lacking altogether. That 20% tax, if that actually can be captured and put back in this community here, I think it might be justified. It's what we do with the money.
Well,
And,
it
and
seems like a lot of that money, I know up to $30 million a year is going back to Department of Health for educational programs. And I know really this was the thing. A lot of the towns and municipalities thought they were going to make out like bandits on this thing. And then at
Right.
the end of the day, really the only money that they're going to make is through, I guess, the towns have the option to instate this 1 to 2% options tax. However, if they're going to impose that on cannabis companies, they have to impose that on every other company that
Yeah.
operates in their area, which is going to piss off a lot of business owners. So it seems like really the money to be made at a town level is very minimal.
Yeah, I mean, you can apparently the towns can organize their own cannabis control committees and charge a licensing fee for the town.
Which is only like $50 or $100 at the local level. And I know Jay has done that. I know I want to say Jeffersonville has done that. There's a number of towns that have taken that up, which seems like just another layer of hoops for cannabis company owners to jump through.
I mean, like for example, in Bradenton, there's only two license holders, right? So, I mean, what are they going to get out of that? 100, $200? I mean, it's
Has
really.
Brownington set up a local control board?
I attempted to early in the game. I thought it would be better if somebody, associated with the industry would put that together.
Sure.
But they opted not to. We're pretty libertarian in this town.
Yeah.
People don't want rules. People don't want any kind of street signs if they don't need to have them there.
And let me ask you this. So you're running on a Democratic ticket, is that correct?
Correct. Yeah.
But so you were just talking about sort of that libertarian view of sort of leave us alone. I'd like to know sort of how that ties into the rest of your platform.
Yeah. So, I'm with the Democratic Party because they contacted me. I'm a bit of a slut that way. The first person to ask. I may have gone with the Republicans if they had, but
Really?
frankly, my personal politics are unique to me, right? And I'm not adjusting really much because
And you're from San Francisco, is that correct?
I am,
Which is a liberal haven.
maybe the most liberal haven. Yeah, it's competing with the town across the bay, the People's Republic of Berkeley. Yeah, so it's a close tie between the two. And I do consider my own politics quite liberal. But I'm representing a district that doesn't see it that way.
Right.
And
there's a lot of conservatives still up your area.
Indeed, and I need to be their representative, and my intention is to live up to that, to be their representation. So but it's interesting. My more conservative neighbors, they are concerned about a very slim, listing of items. They want their firearm liberties, which I share with them.
Do you?
I do. I'm a gun owner. I own a farm. I hunt. I feel good about it.
And I'd like to just interrupt you there because this has been a big issue for some folks who really want to carry guns, but they're worried about the Controlled Substances Act, which says if you have a controlled substance and a firearm, you're looking at federal time. And this is something I've asked a lot of people about, and I know this is over your head. This is federal stuff, but would you like to be able? Would you like to see cannabis company owners be able to carry firearms in their dispensaries or on their farms or something like that?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I'm gonna have to think about that.
Sure. I hate to put you on the spot like that, but this has been a really big question that's come up because people aren't going to be able to carry. This is what I'm hearing from lawyers and from the state is that people are not going to be able to carry firearms. And so then they're going to have to maybe hire private security or install extra camera gear and things of that nature. That's just one more cost on the way to going legal here.
Right. Yeah, especially when you're already a firearm owner. Well, I'm going to have to look into the legality of that too. And in fact, I'm familiar with that law, and it really just sort of you reminded me of it. Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to be carrying. I do not carry open carry any of my weapons, around the cannabis or anything like that. But I do have a gun safe, and there's guns in there.
Have you ever been robbed?
No, no, not yet. In San Francisco,
Knock on wood.
but not in Vermont. But I'm
Wait,
always.
so you were robbed out west?
Oh yeah, not cannabis related, job site related. I had about $200,000 worth of tools taken off the job site.
Damn.
Yeah.
And that kind of shit, I'd probably just let it go. But like, if you're a cannabis grower and that's your whole crop for the year, and I would like to see those kind of people be able to protect themselves and protect their employees, protect their product, protect their money. I'm not a huge Second Amendment guy either, but if we're gonna say, hey, no one's allowed to carry guns, I mean, you might as well put a sign in front of the dispensary that says you could rob us right now.
Yeah, and robbery is a problem in this area. Particularly there have been some robberies in Orleans at the subway. Yeah, so
I see people cutting off catalytic converters and shit.
yeah, it's a little rough. It's a little rough around here at times.
Let me ask you about this. On that note, I'd like to ask you about drug policy a little bit because the heroin thing is a huge problem here in Vermont, and I'm curious what your stance is on. Personally, I am a decrim everything kind of guy, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on our current drug policy.
Yeah, so what I've found out by speaking with some people working at the Howard Center in Burlington is that we don't have a heroin problem anymore because we don't have heroin. It's all fentanyl now, and there's other things being mixed into it that for for the purposes of maintaining your high longer, that are really horrific to the human body. So I think all people should be treated with some level of dignity. I'm of the sense right now that it's a fever pitch issue, particularly in Orleans. There's anger starting to brew, and before it gets to that point, I'd like to address this in a more constructive way. Currently, what it looks like to me is that there are no carrots or sticks or anything. There's like kind of a zero policy at the moment. And in a lot of ways, the strategy of wait and see, very Vermont, right? California, the West, Colorado, ushered out recreational or adult use cannabis quite early in the game. Vermont's coming to it more carefully, using those other examples to put together a model for the industry, for the government to adopt. On the front of opioid misuse and addiction, I don't think we can wait. I think that something needs to happen very quickly here. We need a policy that addresses the problem as a human issue, maintaining the dignity of the addicts. I don't see this as a criminal issue. This is a medical issue, and should have never ever been a criminal law enforcement issue. At least on the front of addiction.
How do you feel about safe injection sites?
I think I think we need to do something. I think and this is coming to the forefront as probably the thing we need to do.
And here's the two arguments I've heard is like, well, especially in Burlington, this is the one place every time they suggest a safe injection site, the people in Burlington, there's two reactions. They're like, well, you see a guy shooting up in public or dropping a needle on the sidewalk, and people say, well, look at this guy. He's shooting up behind a fucking dumpster or something, and it's like, oh, well, let's give him a safe place to go shoot up. And then the other side of the coin is like, well, now we're just enabling them to do more drugs. But we have to strike a balance, it seems like to me, because like otherwise, like if you don't want to see people shooting up in public, you got to give them a place to go. Otherwise, that's just going to continue. And
Yeah.
you know, if you want to deal with the overdose deaths and everything, then just let it happen. But you know, it seems like to me, it seems like a bar is a safe injection site for alcohol. What are your thoughts on that issue, Dave?
Yeah. So the safe injection site concept theory, the thing about it that I think really works here is that it's a place where these individuals come out of the cracks of society, right? I think there's a lot of people lost where the organizations that make a point to make contact with these people and offer them the help that they need, they're off the radar. You know, they're living on couches in derelict parts of town. This allows people with a serious medical problem to come out of the cracks, to come into a system where they are treated with dignity, where they have resources put forward from non governmental agencies, and given the opportunity to get off the drug. 9 times out of 10, these are people who want to get off. They do not want to be on this, right?
And at the very least, when you send them to a safe injection site, they're getting a clean product that's not laced with fentanyl, where you might die instantly from an overdose.
So there's two levels of this, right? There's a safe injection site concept where the user brings their street drug to be administered.
Okay.
And then that allows the facility to test the street drug and inform the user what they're injecting. Okay. Then there's a higher tier of this. This is what they do in Holland. They actually provide the medicine. You know, euphemistically medicine.
And have you looked at the Portugal model at all? Because I know Vermont has, I've spoken with some folks at Department of Health that say we're using data-driven results to sort of try to drive this program in a certain direction. But when I look in Portugal, their rates of use after they've sort of decrimmed everything, their rates of use for cocaine and MDMA and amphetamines have gone almost to zero. The overdoses have gone way down. The rates of HIV and hepatitis things through their clean needle programs have gone way down. And it seems like it's at least worth sort of giving it a shot or taking a look at what's happening there and seeing if maybe we could make that effective here in the States.
I think so. I mean, yeah, everybody I talk to, almost everyone, I bring this idea forth and want to get their 2 cents on it. And I've only had one negative reaction after they understand exactly what we're talking about. I think it requires a certain level of education. It would be helpful if people understood what Portugal was going through and then what they were able to do to remedy the problem.
What was the negative reaction, if you don't mind me asking, if you remember?
Well, I think to go back to your comment, it's enabling, right? There's a gut, a jerk reaction to wanting to punish this, right? Wanting authority to come in and push it out. And what we found is that this is like a problem of kicking the can down the road, right? So you can't arrest this problem away. You just kind of
I feel like, yeah, if we could, that would have happened by now, right?
I mean, we had over 50 years of this.
Or at least.
At least. I mean, but we really turned it up for the last 50 years. And then, in the 1980s with the Ronald Reagan administration, man, that got jacked up. Like, I mean, all the guns, all the handcuffs, all the jail cells haven't fixed the problem,
So do you think that drug use is sort of a natural human behavior?
Well, sure. I mean, we are predisposed to these particular molecules, they fit into receptors in our brain, right? Some of us, though, are more susceptible to liking it to the point that we just keep on pursuing it, to our own downfall at times.
But in a sense, shouldn't that be a matter of personal choice?
I think that that's kind of the libertarian argument. I would say.
Oh, don't lump me in with them, David.
No, but I mean, that is a libertarian argument. I'm thinking that yeah, I mean, I don't think it's something you can actually stop. I think we need to be pragmatic, right? We just need to, but it's interesting because where we see the worst of these behaviors manifesting are all around poverty, right? So poverty is just as much a part of this issue,
right?
And then it comes full circle down to one really crucial thing that keeps on coming up when I talk to people in my district: housing. The housing issue is linking all of these things together, right? Drugs,
so like basic human necessities.
Exactly. I mean, there's some fires going on right now in this community. We need to put them out. We need to identify them. We need to talk about them. We need to talk about them in a way that is without shame, right? There's a certain level of Vermont pride that a lot of people don't want to talk about certain things that are, in the shadows. We need to talk about, we need to shine the light in the shadows. We need to be able to talk about what's happening,
Is that something you see in contrast to when you were living in California, where do you think people are more willing to talk about it out there?
Yeah. People are like diarrhea, man. There's got to be a middle ground to this, right? So we need to acknowledge what's going on in our communities. We need to come up with solutions. Perhaps the safe injection site model is the way to go. I don't think legally we'll be able to take a model like the one where we are administering a tested product. Unfortunately, by federal law, that would really put us in a bad spot. But what we're going to need to do, whatever we do, is going to need to happen around us. It's going to have to happen in New Hampshire. It's going to have to happen in Maine. It's going to have to happen in New York. It's going to have to happen in Massachusetts, right? Like, if we come up with a model that's favorable to, that's seen as enabling, it could attract more of this problem here, right? So we need to nip this one in the bud in a way that doesn't attract. So let me give you an example. San Francisco, we came up with a policy. Well, in fact, it was prompted by the insurance industry because people's car windows were being broken at an alarming rate. To grab the change and the cup holder kind of thing, the laptop, the camera left behind for a quick sale to get high.
Yeah, whatever. Smash and grab.
Exactly, smash and grab. So the city came up with an idea to write checks to homeless people for $800 a month, and it really worked. Petty crime dropped.
Sort of like a universal basic income principle.
Indeed, very much so, but not universal, specific for the homeless population, which measured about 5,500
and San Francisco, as I understand, really got hit by that tech boom, where a lot of people were priced right out of the city. People that have lived there their whole lives. Once Google and them came in, it really made the city unaffordable for a lot of folks, as I understand.
So San Francisco and the Bay Area has always been pretty expensive real estate.
Sure, but it's a beautiful area.
I think it's attracted a certain amount of interest because of the scenic beauty. But man, think about psychedelics and how that impacted technology. So the transistor was invented in Silicon Valley. That's what gave Silicon Valley its name. I believe the transistor was inspired by an acid trip. There's a lot of technology, man, inspired
Those
by.
nerds love the psychedelics.
Well, yeah, but a lot of them weren't so nerdy, man. A lot of them were really into some really cool stuff, and we're victims of our own success out there, right? So with the higher earnings and with people interested in making money, the banking industry, there's a lot of industry in the Bay Area. It drove up and gentrified the cities, and God, what's the native population of San Francisco today? When I left, it was like 2%.
God damn.
Can you imagine that happening to the kingdom? Where
I can actually. I was just going to ask you about that because I've seen like the nature of sort of. I've watched Cabot get sold off to Unilever, or sorry, Cabot got sold off to Agrimark. Ben and Jerry's was sold off to Unilever. I've seen a lot of our maple industry being sold off to Canadian companies. I've seen all of our cannabis, our medical cannabis dispensaries sold off to out-of-state companies. Green Mountain Coffee Roasters. A lot of these industries, it just seems like they're being sold to these out-of-state interests. So I totally can see that happening, and it's really frustrating because I've asked myself constantly, like how long will it be until people in Vermont don't actually own anything in Vermont?
Yeah, when do Vermonters lose Vermont? And I think that that's how we need to solve this opiate problem, right? Because kicking the problem down the road basically means if we're using force, we push them out, right? What we need to do is heal these people. They're Vermonters, and we need to reintegrate them into our society. The idea of improving a condition should not mean selling out and making it more difficult for local people to live there, right?
And, especially it seems like, because with the cannabis, I've listened to the Department of Health talk all about the public health concerns. However, when they started dumping Oxycontin out on the streets, I didn't hear any of that concern. They just said, oh, the manufacturers said it's safe, so it's safe, and we're going to go ahead and create one of the worst opioid epidemics in the country. And I don't even have a question for that, but I guess my point was, I wish we would have seen the same sort of urgency for that public health measure as we've seen for cannabis, because I think anyone in their right mind would understand that heroin and opiates are a much bigger problem than cannabis.
Yeah, but we're dealing with, let's face it, and not to say it in a pejorative way, but ignorance, right? There's people in our community who aren't unfamiliar with cannabis in a personal way, right? So for them, they've been taught that it's all grouped together into this illegal drug category. And wow, psychedelics, cannabis, cocaine, heroin, all of these things are worlds apart from each other. Each one has its own thing about it. I'm not.
But we give Adderall to school children, like 8-year-olds. Those are amphetamines. Those are some of the most potent narcotics ever invented. And so to hear all this public health outcry about cannabis, it just seems odd when there are 8-year-olds taking amphetamine pills.
Yeah, even right now, there's interests out to control cannabis within the legal market, right? With the THC limits and the high taxes on vape, and it wouldn't be great if that energy was being focused and redirected to the opioid epidemic we are experiencing right now, to the poverty.
Or the alcohol. How about alcohol? Alcohol is sold in every gas station, and there's been a lot of talk about advertising for cannabis. We don't want to advertise to kids, but You could go to any store in this state and find alcohol.
Yeah. I mean, look at what we've done with tobacco, right? In California, I'm not sure about here in Vermont. I don't smoke tobacco very frequently, so I don't think I've bought a pack of cigarettes in 10 years. But in drugstores in California, they outlawed tobacco sales, right? So,
Which was weird that they ever sold cigarettes at a pharmacy. I still fucking can't wrap my brain around that.
what is it in Vermont?
I'd have to check on that. I feel like they were trying to phase it out, but don't quote me on that. It just, the fact that you would sell cigarettes at a pharmacy just seems diametrically opposed to the whole mission of a pharmacy.
Amen. Yeah. So, alcohol is a very serious drug, and its impacts are so negative to our community when it's overconsumed and done so irresponsibly. I mean, just drinking and driving. I mean, how many of our friends in this community have lost their lives? Our family members. I mean, drinking and driving is a big deal in Vermont.
Let me ask you that. Let me interrupt you there, because the state is now training new drug recognition experts to detect signs of impairment from cannabis. They're using basically the same test that they use for alcohol. Do you think it's fair to compare the impairment from alcohol to the impairment from cannabis?
No, not at all. I mean, they're worlds apart. There have been some studies. There's one study I would cite, and this is very controversial. So just bear with me here, people. But out of the UK, there was a study done that impairment from cannabis improves driving.
You should send me that.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'd be happy to find it. I think it came out of the university. It's a very weak study. I think that they were looking for a specific result in that, but it's
a lot of the studies that I've seen the Department of Health quote and their safety findings have been sort of cherry picked. It's a one-off study that, and any scientist will tell you, one study proves nothing. So unless you can make that a repeatable and demonstrable study that's, you could show the same results over time, what you've done is cherry picked a study that sort of fits your narrative.
Look, I mean, humans are biased, and when it all comes down to it, we do make a judgment and have to point our needle in a direction. And they've got a policy that they're sticking with, and they're backing it up with cherry picked information. But I mean, so is this UK study, right? So, I mean, but what's clear is that alcohol impairs driving in a really profound way.
Absolutely.
And cannabis,
in a fairly repeatable way, I might add. Those effects are like, if you drink enough, you're going to start stumbling. You're going to start slurring your words. But I feel like I could smoke 6 joints in a row. I'm still going to talk straight, and I could probably drive a car all right.
Not everybody's like that, though, right? Like, some people are impacted differently from cannabis. In fact, some people are very negatively impacted from cannabis.
And that is kind of my point here, is that it seems like we're trying to make one size fits all rules for something that affects everybody very differently, clearly.
Well, I mean, look who's doing it. It's law enforcement, right? And law enforcement, they're coming from a perspective, and it's a valid perspective for law enforcement to have.
Really? It's actually not, dude. I actually feel that, because and one of the main concerns is with edibles. And I'm going to say this right now: there has been times where I have ate too many edibles, and I absolutely cannot drive. In stark difference to when I'm drunk, I'm not like, let's go fucking driving. I'm like, yo, I can't drive right now. I need to stay. I feel very different. The impairment from cannabis is like, okay, I need to stay at home base and wait till I'm cool. Like with alcohol, your inhibitions are gone, and you're like, I've driven drunker than this, or something like that,
So I have to throw this in because I don't want to be misunderstood here. I think the THC caps on edibles is a hard one to argue against. You
Hmm.
know, I mean, five milligrams seems really low, but you know, it's a great way to control a substance, especially something that's attractive to children. You know,
I
so
actually like the 5 milligrams per dose as a starter dose. I think that's a great place to start. And whenever someone I haven't encountered before asks me, I tell them to start with 5.
yeah,
However, I thought the maximum on a package where they said you can only have 50 milligrams per package, I thought that was going to create a lot of wasteful packaging, really, because I know people that eat hundreds of milligrams of edibles a day. So for those people, they'd now have to go to a dispensary and buy 6, 7, 8 packages of edibles where, before they could just get a 500 milligram chocolate bar or something.
so correct me, but the last time I looked at the rules, I thought the limit was 50 pieces per package.
No, no, no. 50 milligrams total per package. 5 milligrams is the maximum dose.
Wow. Yeah, that's a lot of packaging. I agree with that. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And that's something I'd really like to see go away because the medical dispensaries, which of course have been bought up by out of state corporations, are exempted from that. So they can sell edibles in different, yeah, take a note of that. Because like
Yeah.
this is one thing that's really irritated me, man. Like the state has talked a lot about making this industry more environmentally friendly, and that provision right there, 50 milligrams maximum per package, is going to create so many wasteful packages.
I agree. I agree. I mean, when I thought it was 50 pieces. So I think that's more in line with where my mind is at,
Mm.
you know.
David, look,
Um
we've had a good hour here, and we've talked a lot about cannabis. I'd like to ask you. I got to get out of. I got about half an hour left, but I'd like to know if there's anything else that's super important to you that, as part of your platform, that you'd like to speak on.
yeah, I mean, look, we oh, yeah, actually, so DCF and family courts right now. You know, I'm thinking about children's rights
Mm.
versus parents' rights. The bar is so low for a child to be taken into custody right now.
Mm.
You know, the state clearly doesn't want to be spending money on kids, and that's a real problem. Part of the cyclical nature of poverty is, you know, handed down from bad parenting. I mean, when I say bad parenting, man, I don't mean like, you know, your dad spanks you. I mean, like your family is, you know, selling you for sex, you know, or feeding you dog food, or there's shit on the floor, right? There's some really low bars in this state for children to be taken from families, and I've heard of some. I mean, just, you know, in the last 2 months, I've heard of some horrific stories about children being re-released to their natural parents and dying. You know, yeah.
I'd love
So
to see that if you got links to that.
yeah. Let me just take a note.
Yeah, that's horrific.
Yeah. So you know, and the ping pong game that's going on with kids, where they're taken into custody, then brought to a foster family, brought back to re-released to the foster parent or the natural parents, then taken back into custody again and back to the foster parents
Man.
again. Maybe this time a different foster parent. You know, it's really unfair and damaging to our society what's happening with kids in Vermont.
Mm.
And I think a lot of this is being overlooked.
Mm.
I think that's really, really important, you know.
Do you have any kids, David?
I do. I have a soon to be 17-year-old son and two stepsons, a 6 and an 8-year-old.
Mm. So you married?
Yeah, I've remarried. I was married for 20 years and divorced after coming to Vermont. In my second year, my wife left me, and you know, I wasn't her cup of tea anymore. But my new wife, who I just married 3 weeks ago, I'm her shot of whiskey. You know?
Hey, congratulations, man.
Thank you, thank you.
So
Yeah,
you've taken on a couple of her kids as well in the stepdad role.
indeed. As a stepfather, I mean, they still have their natural father, but now they have three parents.
Do
You
they
know,
like you?
they love me. Yeah, I mean, not always, right? But it's not about like winning friends when being a parent.
Hmm. And can you tell us a little bit about what you got going on at the farm out there
Yeah,
on
so
a closing note, maybe?
yeah, sure, sure. So today we just slaughtered some chickens. So we raised pasture raised, organic, supplementally fed chickens.
Can I get one?
Yeah, yeah, of course you can. Absolutely. We still do the sheep here. This is going to be our biggest year yet for harvesting lamb. Um, and you know, of course, we've got the cannabis going. You know, I really kept it small this year because we didn't get the permission to grow without the license until the last minute.
Right.
You know, I mean, actually, it was past the last minute. It was
Yeah.
several months past the last minute. So I put in 6 plants for myself, 6 plants for my neighbor, and you know, well, I've got 2 houses on the property, so I rent to them. So I'm calling them a household.
Did the delay hold up your growing season?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And because I put the plants in late, you know, they're not as developed as I would have liked. But I mean, fortunately, my practices are pretty sound. I don't have much mold. A lot of people are complaining about mold. Things are looking all right. I kind of went off the rails with genetics this year. I let go of what I was growing last year, and I regret it.
What kind of gear you
And
what kind of gear are you running out there, David?
so it's real primitive, right, man? I'm an outdoor grower, so I've got a tennis court, a fenced-in tennis court on my property.
No, I meant
So,
like genetics.
oh, genetics. Well, last year, what really worked well was Barney's Purple Punch.
I've seen
Um,
some purple punches out here killing it.
yes, yes, that's the way to go if you want to get you know, something standard. Um, I haven't had a lot of luck, man. I've tried so many different varieties, and I think this year or next year, I'm going to go back to Purple Punch.
Mm.
Yeah,
I might have a couple suggestions for you we could talk about after this.
I'd love to hear it, man.
Fuck yeah. Look, I got to get out of here, David, but I always leave the last word for my guests. I want to thank you again for joining me. I really appreciate your time. I wish you the best of luck. You said, well, sounds like you don't need luck in this election, but I always leave the last word for my guests. So this is all you, man. Thanks a lot for your time.
Yeah, thank you, Caleb. Yeah, I would just say that if you live in Orleans County, please consider me. Even though I don't have an opponent this year, please go out to vote, register, be a part of the democracy. We have an amazing system here in Vermont. Participate in it, make a difference. You know, be an activist and stand up for. It doesn't matter what you're about. Like, you know, make it happen. You know. Thanks, man.
Great note to leave it on. David Templeman, Roving Tail Farm, Brownington, Vermont, Orleans County House Rep. Hopefully we'll see you in November and we can get you back on, Dave. It's been a pleasure.
Right. Yeah, you too.
Thank you so much.